Hi, hello. Welcome to the episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is June the 23rd, 2026. Hopefully, this episode finds you well, in good spirits and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Hopefully, you had a good day. Hopefully, it treated you well. As for me, as for mine, it's been a good day. I will say, I woke up far too early, and that was a bit unfortunate to start my day with the back pain. It was still, an ongoing issue. But we rose. We made it happen. Got myself together. I got myself to work. Work overall was still pretty slow. We had a peak day, and just not a peak day, but I say peak day in terms of like Monday and Tuesday are our busiest days of the week. That's what I mean by peak, not necessarily you're in peak season. And there really wasn't anything to do. And I was like, man, this sucks. I will say I did a lot of putbacks, and I think that's why I'm kind of belly aching, complaining. I do have another theory as to why we are so slow. Maybe it is a little bit of the supply chain or lack of people paying, whatever, slow season, blah 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 blah. But I also was reminded. I just kind of thought about it as I was looking around. We're doing like construction work in the warehouse. Like we're doing a big thing for one of our big conveyor belts that literally goes through all the floors of the warehouse. And I was like, oh, I could see that being a thing, being forecasted by management and saying, hey, maybe we're going to divert some of the work to the other warehouses because we're a pretty, big operation, so to speak. So maybe that's a little bit of the reason why we aren't moving, and grooving that much right now. I don't know. Maybe we're taking advantage of the slow season. It's probably a culmination of maybe all of the above. I don't know. Whatever. Needless to say, I was so tired. I was beat. Like maybe around halfway through the day, I just had no energy left. I was contemplating leaving early, like kind of once all my cardboard was crushed up and ready to go. I was like, I don't know. I gotta get out of here. And I'm like, no, hang as tough as you can. Do the putbacks, man. I know you hate it, but just get through it. Do a couple more. Then we got done with work and I just headed straight home. I headed straight home. Took about, I don't know, somewhere around an hour nap. And I woke up and it felt like my health bar like regenerated a bit. I felt so much better. My back felt a lot better. I'd say now the pain sitting at around a point 0.5 to a 1. We'll take that. So I got myself up, had myself a little Arizona Honor Palmer. Where, like I said, we're still off the caffeine. So, slurp that up. And then, and if that does have caffeine in it, that would be crazy, right? I feel like Arizona doesn't. Anyway, slurp that up, went to the gym. Gym was good. It was so busy. I didn't like it. Busy odd Tuesday. But we got some movements in. Overall, it felt good, and got in, got out. Then post the gym, we came home, had our stretch, had our snack, did some research, and we got a lot to cover. So we can go ahead and just do our startup and let's get into the news. Yeah, I'm knocking on wood that hopefully this is the last of me talking about my back being hurt for a while. Hopefully I've learned my lesson and I really won't be going for the gusto like that. It's okay that I'm in a different kind of training regimen right now. I do feel like overall it's working and I like the results. I like, what we're getting out of it right now. It just means I'm not lifting as heavy as I used to, and so be it. Maybe I'll have a little bit of a side arc where I try to get it back, maybe towards the end of the year or next year. We'll see. But, right now, I'm liking where I'm at with the gym. All right. We're starting off the episode with some Congress-related news from the BBC. Congress passes war powers measure for first time, rebuking Trump's war with Iran. The Republican controlled U.S. Senate has approved a measure instructing President Donald Trump to halt the war in Iran or seek congressional approval before continuing military action. A handful of Republicans joined Democrats in a 50-48 vote on Tuesday, marking a bipartisan show of approval or bipartisan show of disapproval of the war. The same measure was passed by the U.S. House of Representatives in June, where four Republicans joined every Democrat to approve it in a 215-208 vote. But the resolution is largely symbolic because even after passing both chambers of Congress, it will not be sent to Trump for his consideration and does not carry the force of the law. And I'm sure also the Trump administration would argue this doesn't mean anything. We are literally in peace talks. We have the memorandum of understanding and all that. And according to JD Vance, talks are going well. We'll see, whatever. That being said, you could at least say, hey, it's another sign of Congress saying, hey, we really got to start trying to save face for ourselves here. We got to start thinking of a future beyond Trump, or I don't know, even try to scramble to try to fight for these midterms. I don't know, but they're making some changes, which is getting to our next story, also out of Congress from NBC News. House passes sweeping bill to lower housing costs, sending it to Trump's desk. The House passed a major housing affordability bill Tuesday, aimed at boosting the supply of homes and cracking down on large investors buying up houses. The bill passed 358 to 32, one day after it cleared the Senate by a vote of 85-5. It now goes to President Donald Trump, who is supportive and is expected to sign it into law. It is a rare bipartisan achievement for a largely gridlocked Congress in Trump's second term, giving Republicans who control both chambers a desperately needed victory on a politically potent issue of lowering costs just months ahead of the midterms. The 21st Century Road, which is an acronym, to Housing Act, includes grant funding and pilot programs to build new homes. It would also ease some regulations and empower local governments to expedite reviews to build housing. And a key section titled Homes Are for People, Not Corporations, would limit any large institutional investor from buying single-family homes. The bill had stalled for months amid disputes between the House and the Senate, but a breakthrough came last week when key leaders in both chambers struck a deal. And they named them, but I don't really care. Here today and probably here for a long time, but whatever. Anyway, fuck it. I just don't feel like naming all these dudes. Anyway, this is a good thing. Let me cut the yada bullshit. I am happy that you at least see Congress trying to do something in this arena. Trying to tackle this problem at least at all. Obviously it's not enough. It's a step in a direction maybe that's hopefully positive, hopefully good for people who are trying to just, once again, buy a home, have some shelter. That's really what this is all about at the end of the day. And the housing market is very expensive. We're all priced out of it in a lot of ways. At least I know I am. So it's nice to see something that is potentially giving you a chance at having that American dream. So, yay, we love that. But, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it progresses. And like I said, it's a step in the right direction. It's definitely not, oh, yay, we did it. And it's also worth noting, and I'm glad it's another reason why I picked this article, why the Republicans were kind of pushed to doing this, because things are just going so badly. You look at the, Trump's approval ratings, and if they're not liking him, they're most likely not liking you guys as well, because you guys are running the whole show in Congress, in the House and the Senate. So you kind of gotta, do something, show something. And this is the something, I guess, that they said, hey, we'll reach across the aisle actually, and we'll come to terms on something. We'll make some housing a little bit better for these poors. Like I said, we'll see. Once again, let's knock on some wood for that. Anyway, let's move on to our next story. Switching branches. Once again, though, from NBC. Supreme Court rules against Rastafarian man over religious rights claim against prison officials. The Supreme Court on Tuesday ruled against a devout Rastafarian who sought damages after Louisiana prison officials cut his dreadlocks despite his claim that it violated his religious rights. The court ruled 6-3 that Damon Landor cannot seek damages under a law called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, or RLUIPA. The court was divided along ideological lines, with conservatives in the majority and liberals dissenting. The ruling saw the conservative majority depart from its regular support of religious claims, although recent high-profile wins tended to involve conservative Christians. Which, is that surprising? No, it's just unfortunate to show, hey, we are so about protecting religion, but when we say that, especially at this high level, we are really just being very mask off about it. We only mean Christianity. We only mean the white bread version. That's it, man. You do any of the other stuff, that's a whole other thing, and we can't really promise that you're going to have the same protections. Sorry about it. Which is a shame, because I feel like if you're going to protect that part, it's all religion, then you have to defend, you have to protect. But essentially they're saying, no, actually we're going to split some hairs here. This is actually a little bit different. But let me read a quote from Landor a little bit more. I am disappointed but not defeated. What happened to me violated my faith and my dignity. I will continue pursuing accountability. What happened to me should not happen to anyone else, Landor said in a statement released by his lawyers. The underlying incident took place in 2020 at the Raymond Labordi Correctional Center, where Landor was moved while serving a 5-month sentence on a drug-related charge. Officers handcuffed Landor to a chair and shaved his head despite his protestations. Beforehand, he had shown them a copy of a binding court ruling that said it would be a religious rights violation to cut a Rastafarian's dreadlocks. Prior to the incident, he had not cut his hair for 20 years, in accordance with a practice known as the Nazarite vow. Excuse me. Now, Justice Neil Gorsuch essentially says, actually, you didn't enter in with a binding agreement with the prison, so they're not actually liable. Which I fucking disagree with. I feel like you're doing a little bit of legal jujitsu to kind of make your point here that you're actually carved out of this somehow. And I do think if we switched the person's religion, we would be having a different conversation. And I would argue a couple other variables. But and that's a frustrating fucking thing. Because you would at least hope that if we're talking about this thing, that conservatives go high and low to defend and protect, that it would just encompass all of it. But we all know at the end of the day, they just don't really want to protect anything other than their own interests, which is, that good old white Jesus. Let's see here. Is there any more details that I wanted to cover or pull out of this? No, not really. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that is the coverage. I know I covered this when it initially hit the pipeline in the Supreme Court. So I was like, hey, let's just cover the wrap up. Obviously, it's not the ruling we wanted to see, but it is not surprising. No. All right. Now let's move on. There has been an explosion of fraud news. It seems like the FBI has really just gotten off its ass. Kash Patel is like, I need to not get fired today. And he is getting these most wanted fraudsters. So the rest of the episode is just me kind of doing some coverage on that. So we can just kind of dig into that. From Al Jazeera, the $3.7 billion man inside one of U.S. biggest Medicare frauds. A man accused of looting billions from the United States healthcare system has been returned to the U.S. to face justice, having been caught in Turkey following more than a year on the run, the Federal Bureau of Investigation announced on Monday. The U.S. businessman Ibrahim Khaldoon Hilmi is accused of orchestrating a $3.7 billion Medicare fraud scheme, following what FBI Director Kash Patel has called one of the biggest healthcare fraud investigations in U.S. history. Medicare is a U.S. health insurance program for people aged 65 and over, and for younger people with disabilities. There you go, a little quick breakdown there. Hilmi is an American businessman who is based in Delray Beach, Florida. He ran companies which appeared on paper to be legitimate healthcare suppliers. One of these companies was Sunshine Senior Solutions, according to the Florida Department of State, which billed Medicare for medical equipment for elderly patients. In reality, prosecutors say it was a front designed to drain taxpayer money. Hilmi is accused of carrying out fraud to steal $3.7 billion of federal money. His network made purchases through several legitimate U.S. companies, including Sunshine Senior Solutions, and used them as fronts to submit fraudulent claims to Medicare for durable medical equipment, including knee braces, wrist supports, wound cushions, catheters, and other items. However, many of the patients listed on the orders either never requested the items, never received them, or didn't exist at all. For years, the scale of the scheme masked its exposure. By running claims through dozens of legitimate-looking companies, Hilmi's network avoided displaying many of the red flags that typically trigger Medicare audits. The use of real business names, real medical equipment categories, and real-sounding patient records gave the billing a veneer of legitimacy. When federal investigators finally began closing in, Hilmi had one more card to play. He fled. In May of 2025, he left the U.S. before authorities could arrest him, according to the FBI, disappearing abroad and remaining beyond the reach of U.S. Law enforcement. Hilmi evaded capture for just over a year. In the end, Turkish authorities tracked him down and arrested him in Turkey, after which the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group carried out a foreign transfer of custody, a formal process for transferring a suspect from a foreign country back to U.S. jurisdiction, according to the FBI. So yeah, I mean, this was a big caper, and this was just one. There's also another one, and wait, there will be more. Anyway, from ABC News, Texas doctor charged an $89 million fraud case as administration pushes healthcare crackdown. The Justice Department has charged a Texas doctor in an $89 million healthcare fraud scheme, accusing him of billing insurers for medically unnecessary cardiovascular screening tests for college student athletes, and then rubber stamping the results as normal without reviewing them. Jason Finkelstein, hopefully I'm getting that right, 53, faces charges of healthcare fraud and conspiracy in what prosecutors describe as a years-long scheme that preyed on the fears of athletes that they could die on playing fields or courts of sudden cardiac arrest. Athletes with no pre-existing conditions who were concerned about being cleared to compete were administered tests they did not need, and in one case, a patient whose results were falsely certified as normal later died after his significant heart problems were undetected, the indictment says. The prosecution is among a series of cases that the Justice Department intends to highlight at a news conference Tuesday in announcing what it says are record results in a nationwide crackdown on healthcare fraud, a long-running federal law enforcement priority that the Trump administration over the last year has sought to emphasize, which is kind of spoiling the last story. But I want to get to this quote from Oz, which is in the thumbnail. The doctor's alleged conduct, which ignored a textbook diagnosis of preventable cardiac death, is heinous. Dr. Mehmet Oz, a trained cardiothoracic surgeon and head of Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, said in a statement, adding that Medicare fraud doesn't just steal money, it can steal lives, which, I mean, good quote, agreed. This is definitely a certified fraud thing. It's why, I'm definitely compelled to cover both these stories and all of these, kind of frauds. I definitely don't consider it lighter. It's one of those things where it's like, there's the argument of like, well, really, I'm just bilking the government here, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of times where there is a actual person on the other end of this, and their insurance is getting fucked up for potentially life, or they're going to go through unnecessary tests and screenings and this, that, and the fucking third. So these frauds, definitely have victims. They definitely have people on the side of them who, have to go through a whole bunch of unnecessary bullshit and potential trauma, all because a doctor, which is a person you trust. You're putting your life in their hands in one way, shape, or form. And, in the situation, we have people abusing that. So, I definitely want to highlight that shit, throw tomatoes at these motherfuckers, say boo, all the above. And also it is quite fascinating. Let's see. The alleged fraud ran between 2019 and the end of last year, and prosecutors say involved Finkelstein and a pair of unidentified co-conspirators at a Florida-based cardiovascular testing and treatment practice that he owned and operated. Officials say the scheme had initially two components, with Finkelstein and the company using what the indictment says were deceptive marketing tactics to offer free heart screens for students who did not need them, and then certifying the results of the test as normal without reviewing them, and even when they turned out to reveal potential problems. The indictment quotes Finkelstein as telling an unnamed co-conspirator with whom he worked with, or who he worked, that these kids could be high risk. One of them drops dead on a field. They're coming after both of us, which that sounds like a fucking threat. That's how I would conceive that. Finkelstein's co-conspirators blasted out emails to athletic trainers at colleagues and universities, stating that the tests being offered could identify any life-threatening condition that could prevent the students from playing, and also offered kickbacks and other inducements to school officials to refer potential patients. Insurance companies do not cover blanket cardiovascular testing, but instead require a prior finding of a medical necessity. To avert that roadblock and secure reimbursement, prosecutors say, Finkelstein submitted to insurers phony diagnoses of conditions such as elevated blood pressure and hypertension that the athletes did not actually have. His company relied on sonographers who lacked the requisite credentials to travel to college campuses to perform the tests. And because Finkelstein was licensed in the 48 contiguous, I'm fucking that word up, my bad, states, contiguous states, he and his company were able to submit claims for patients across the country, the indictment says. At the same time, prosecutors say Finkelstein would certify cardiac test results as being normal without actually reviewing them. In one instance in 2024, according to the indictment, he signed off after roughly 11 seconds on approximately 63 test result images of one patient. The test results actually revealed multiple cardiac abnormalities, and the patient later died. So he was just like, good. He's just speed running the shit so he can just get through his fucking day, man. And it's like, once again, there's a whole ass fucking person there who's going to eventually go out and die on the field. So that's pretty fucking grim. So I will give it to this administration for wrangling up a guy like that. But yeah, like I said, we are closing out with the big get for the FBI for Cash Money Patel. Let me take my last break though, and we'll go ahead and close it out there. All right. Pulling the story from ABC 3340 News. 455 people charged in alleged $6.5 billion healthcare fraud schemes. DOJ. The Department of Justice announced charges against 455 people across 45 states accused of participating in healthcare fraud schemes involving more than $6.5 billion in false claims. Can I take a random aside here? Just thinking about inflation. I've been watching a Metal Gear Solid playthrough, and thinking about one of the terrorist demands of $1 billion being a lot of money back in the day. It's just so funny because we're just tossing around the word a billion now like a lot. I say that word a lot covering news, and then I'm thinking too. We got fuck ass Elon Musk, who is, technically a trillionaire now. So that's a thing. We got like trillionaires in the bitch. That's crazy. It's like, what a time. What a time to be alive where, we really are fucking saying billions with a B. Billions. Blanche was joined by Department of Health and Human Services, Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He described it as the second largest amount ever charged in a single healthcare fraud operation. So really everyone's getting involved here. Even Mehmet Oz, is getting his mention, so yay, we're stamping out fraud. There's a lot of yada 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 here, but I just wanted to mention that roundup, just to say we covered it. But yeah, that's really it. That's the news for today. If you'd like to help out, support the effort, I do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Isaiah News. Become a newsie today. Free ways to hit me up, IsaiahNews1@gmail.com. Feel free to follow me or the podcast on any of the socials. Subscribe to the YouTube, follow on TikTok, follow on Spotify, follow on Apple Podcast, wherever you like to listen. Leave a like, leave a cool comment. Sharing is caring. 5 stars on Spotify, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts are always appreciated. But if you don't do any of that, that's okay. That's all right. I really just appreciate you hanging out and letting me yap to you about my day, about my takes on the news, what's happening, all that shit. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks so much for being a friend. And hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. I love ya. Bye-bye. Mwah.